So spring practices have begun for the Crimson Tide, and with that, we have got to talk about some of the notable things Nick Saban said and some of the things I'm most looking forward to this spring before we get to the spring game. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe that some of these young wide receivers are going to step up and make a name for themselves this year? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and I'm on my push to 15,000 subscribers, and I'd love to have you a part of the community as we continue. If you do enjoy this content, like and comment down below, as those interactions, though they may seem super small, are really massive to content creators such as myself, in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, we have got to talk about Nick Saban on the podium on Friday talking about spring practice, where we got some interesting tidbits. First and foremost, we're going to talk about 3 players for the Crimson Tide who will be absent during this springtime. We have defensive end Keanu Cott. We have 2 players on offense, Darian Dalcourt and Ja'Cory Brooks. And we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball in the trenches. And this is one that I'm really saddened to hear, because it wasn't long ago I sat here with y'all and we talked about the impact and the necessity of Alabama's offensive line to continue their progression. And one of the areas I was really excited about is that you had 2 centers in Darian Dalcourt and Seth McLaughlin that had tangible experience, and that tangible experience is something that could have really helped propel this line forward, especially at that center position. With the absence of Darian Dalcourt, you still do have tangible experience in Seth McLaughlin, someone who came in the latter portion of the year and really played well. But the point still remains, right? Like Nick Saban always says, iron sharpens iron, and Dalcourt's presence in that battle is only going to make both players better. And so I wish a speedy recovery to Dalcourt. Really disappointed to hear that he's not going to be present for the spring, but hopefully that's a situation that can figure itself out. Seth McLaughlin continuing to get these positive reps. In the wide receiver room, Ja'Cory Brooks, it's a conversation that's very analogous to the one we just had about Darian Dalcourt. When you look at Ja'Cory Brooks, he was somebody that, of the freshman receivers last year, he probably put up the most production and in the biggest moments, namely that Iron Bowl. He's someone who's got a lot of upside. A lot of the receivers have talked very highly of Brooks, so him not being there is a hit. He's someone who could have taken really positive strides in this year too, and this offseason, getting more reps with Bryce, more acclimated to the offensive system. Alas, that's not going to be the case. The silver lining here, though, is Brooks is an individual who I have high faith in. I think he's got a really high ceiling. This does give the opportunity for more depth to be developed during the spring for the Crimson Tide in a room that they lost a lot of senior presence over the past 3 years. I mean, when we're looking at this, I've said it before, Alabama 2 years ago sent 2 wide receivers to the NFL draft. The year after that, they sent 2 more wide receivers to the NFL draft. In the first round in both of those years, we fast forward to the draft that's going to be upon us before we know it. And if it weren't for Mechie's injury, we could be talking about a situation where they may be sending 2 more to the first round, even if you aren't a believer that Mechie would have graded in the first round, which would have been interesting to see with a 1,000-yard season. He'd have been on the precipice of it, probably a second rounder, but it could have happened with a really positive pro day, with a really positive combine. I point this out to note that over 3 years, Alabama has lost 5 receivers to the first round of the NFL draft, Mechie included, Slade Bolden included. It's a room where a lot of seniority has left, but that doesn't dismiss the talent they have there. So when Ja'Cory Brooks is unfortunately not available this offseason, it's a hit, because he's someone who could be a really big piece to this offense next year. But at the same time, we have to remember there's so many young faces in that room that can have development now, that can get some more increased reps. I think that this is a situation that we have to watch closely, especially with Jermaine Burton inserting himself into the conversation. And finally, with Keanu Cott, the edge rusher, very talented individual, not going to be available during the spring. That's a big hit for Cott specifically, but if we're talking about the position group, I've said this before, that's the deepest position group in college football. So it's a hit for Cott and his ability to continue his progression, because he is a very talented player. But that room is the room I worry least about for the Crimson Tide. You're talking Will Anderson on one side, Dallas Turner on the other. Will Anderson being the best defensive player in college football, Dallas Turner being one of the best edge rushers in college football, and then the depth behind them is astronomical. 5-star Chris Braswell, 5-star Jeremiah Alexander. Depending on where you put him, 5-star Jahad Campbell. So you've got options in that regard. But speaking of the transfers, we now need to talk about what Nick Saban said in that light, because Nick Saban had nothing but positive things to say about all three of the transfers for the Crimson Tide, being Jermaine Burton, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Eli Ricks. And these three dudes could have massive seasons for the Crimson Tide, and there's someone we need to watch. Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, offers so much versatility in this offense, and it's a versatility that's desperately needed. He is so dangerous receiving out the backfield, but he has got a cut ability to really make a defense pay when he's running the ball in a traditional sense. Jermaine Burton is a very talented wide receiver, had some injury struggles, but now he's in a situation where he can get healthy, come into a new system with Bryce Young, the Heisman winning trophy quarterback from last year, looking to pursue back-to-back Heismans this year. That's only going to be a positive relationship. And then Eli Ricks, I don't feel like I even really need to say anything about that situation. We all know what Eli Ricks does. One of the best corners in college football is a true freshman. Now he's going to be paired up with the five-star cornerback, #1 corner in the class after, JaQuincy McKinstry. So, love the transfers. It's going to be very interesting to see how they affect the battles, but I really love what they give the Crimson Tide in terms of experience, in terms of tangible, positive playing time, and it's going to help other guys come along. So love all of those. The running back room is one that once they get healthy, man, that's going to be a dangerous unit. Can't wait to see it, but it all relies on that offensive line. The last thing we're going to talk about in relation to this is the Crimson Tide are losing an assistant coach in Mark Orfeh. Mark Orfeh was an analyst for the Crimson Tide, hired in 2021 out of Houston, Texas. Very positive experience in terms of coaching history, and now he's going to be the new cornerbacks coach at Rutgers. This is a move I'm very excited for Mark Orfeh. I think a lot of the viewers of this channel know I've been rooting for Mark Orfeh for quite some time. He has a history and connection to Galena Park North Shore. That's where he graduated high school from. Very familiar with the Houston area, coached at Utah State. And if you are really up on your P's and Q's, if you see a coach coming from one of those Utah states, those Montana states, for whatever reason, that's a coaching carousel area, right? Like they're constantly putting out great coaches. I'm very excited to see what the future holds for Mark Orfeh, and I wish him absolutely nothing but the best. I'm going to be keeping up with what Rutgers is able to do now, especially since he's there. But with all that being said, if you asked me right now before we close, who's an individual that I think could make really positive waves this offseason, there's a few names I could point to, and speaking specifically of the freshmen. One person I am really interested in, though, is Curtis Perry. Curtis Perry, the defensive lineman, is coming into a situation where Alabama is going to be trying to replace a lot of production from the interior. Now, they have a lot of talented pieces, but this is a situation where Perry is such a talented player. He's someone who could easily find himself there, but don't also leave out Kendrick Law. There's a lot of guys that early enrolled for the Crimson Tide that I'm very confident in and can't wait to see what they're able to do. But more specifically, I'm interested in hearing from y'all. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're really looking for in spring, what position groups you're most excited about, and then let me know if you think one of these freshman wide receivers is really going to step up and make a name for themselves. That's it. See ya.